It's about 6 o'clock, so we're going to call to order the Maple Run Unified School District Board of Directors meeting. It is 6:01, and we are in the Maple Run MRUSD Central Office. First of all is the agenda review. Does anyone have any revision requests to the agenda? Seeing none, the agenda is accepted without objection. And next, if you stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next we have the visitors section. Do we have any visitors online?
We have several, but nobody has asked to participate yet.
Okay, and do we have any visitors in the room who would like to make a statement? Do we want to give it a minute? Or?
Excuse me, I would like to speak. I'm sorry.
Okay, if you could just hold on just a quick second, I'm just going to read our policy. The public comment and visitor section of the meeting is an opportunity for committee members to address issues of concern about policy, budget, or administrative matters, or to share ideas about how we can work together to improve our schools. We value input and respect divergent views. We ask you to limit your remarks to time constraints, in this case 3 minutes, and refrain from airing grievances with individual members of the school community, including respecting the privacy of students and parents. Those attending remotely can type the full names in the comments section if they wish to speak. With no one in the room, I believe we're good to go.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for allowing visitors to come to your meetings and be at the beginning of the agenda. I appreciate that. I am here to invite the district to join in an effort to with a Common School Working Group, the community of Fairfield, the town of Fairfield, Fairfield Community Center, Benton Northrop Memorial Library, to come up with a use and renovation plan for the Common School. The working group came to a consensus after reviewing 7 scenarios for the Common School. They ranged from demolition to total reconstruction. And the working group thought the best future for the Common School was complete renovation. And so what we're looking for is partners to plan and implement that renovation. We have a working group that's really active, and we wanted to offer this opportunity to the district first because the Common School is at the corner of 36 and South Road, if you guys don't know where it is. And it's part of the Fairfield campus already. So I'm just looking for maybe a couple staff members in central office that might work with the working group to pursue options for collaboration on this project.
And do you have a contact?
Yeah, Charlie, Julie's contacted me through email. I'm sorry I didn't get back to you, Julie, yesterday. But I'll get to it and we'll get someone up there to meet with, to be part of the group.
That would be great. Bill, then you would be my primary contact?
Yes, I am. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Great. All right. I would appreciate it. I mean, I see a lot of potential for the building. You know, the Fairfield Community Center is interested in running an after-school program out of there. And I just didn't know what needs the district had for more space, even for office space. So I'd love to talk about the possibilities.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other visitors who wish to speak in the room or online? If not, then we'll go ahead and move on to item 5, equity policy work session. And I will turn that over to Harry.
Thanks, Charlie. I think really to start, I would just like to say it's an honor to be here to be in the space where you've invited young people, community members, and board members to the table to begin a conversation toward developing an equity policy. I think I really want to pass it to Bill and Jacoby to sort of frame and welcome you all to the work. My part is to really guide the process, to facilitate, and they are bringing a lot of the content and background and material for tonight. So can I pass it to you, Bill and Jacoby?
Yes, I didn't know, Harry, if you needed a round of introductions. We should have probably brought name tags out, but we didn't. And
Well,
just thought,
I pretty much worked the room because
Yeah.
my favorite thing is to schmooze. So I don't know if I got to say hi to everybody because a few people walked in late. But my name is Harry Frank, and I work with an organization called Up for Learning. Up for Learning stands for Unleashing the Power of Partnership in Learning. And our abiding commitment is to work with young people at the table as decision makers, youth and adults as the partners in decision making, I guess I should really say. And we've been, I can only say it's been an extraordinary partnership with Bill and the high school, and specifically the Student Voice Committee, of whom there are some members here tonight. And for your background a little bit, we're also now working with all of the student councils at the high school, which has been an extraordinary opportunity for us as an organization, but also something to really admire in your school district, that we're now trying to bring our tools and strategies to all the groups that have students involved in conversations, decision making. So how's that? Is that?
The only thing I would add is that you've been working with us for 3 years.
Thanks.
And how many, it's what, 6 states up for learning's in now, 6 or 7 states?
I think that's right. Jacoby, how's that sound? 6 or 7?
Yeah, I think it's like 7 or 8.
So Jacoby actually works for us too in other school districts. For instance, he was at CVU this afternoon facilitating a conversation about, well, a piece of the Listen and Learn tour, right? That the Secretary of Education is, that's her initiative, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, you work with several schools, and Harry and I have known each other for many years. The only thing I'd add, for people out of context, Harry's been a school board member. He worked for Vermont School Boards Association as well. Where you were their outreach. What was it, your title? I saw it as outreach/education.
Yeah, education. In fact, I've been in this room with the board probably 10 or 12 years ago, so it was a familiar thing to walk in and remember. So, yeah. My whole career has been in education, from teaching in high school to working as a building administrator to then working with outside organizations like the School Boards Association and now Up for Learning. So it's been a great journey, and I feel really fortunate to be in a place to work this way now, to be at the table with young people and adults, really partnering. So,
Thanks. I just thought that was important context, Harry,
Thank
for
you.
everybody to kind of have that. One of the things that's happened over our 3-4+ year journey with equity and strategic plan and district goals that's been identified, and we went through and what are supports that we can give. And one of the things that came out of the district goals was education on diversity, inclusion, and equity. And through that strategic planning process last year, one of the things was, part of that was for the board to develop a policy, an equity policy. This board, up on the wall, is a statement from the Vermont School Boards Association and the Vermont Superintendents Association on definition of educational equity. I have looked through board minutes back 6, 7, 8 years. It was never adopted by this board, so there's nothing really that kind of says this is where the Maple Run board is on this. And so one of the things that was identified by the strategic planning group was to develop an equity policy. At the same time last year, we had a group of staff members who were working on a bias reporting system. And one of the things they asked for in their work and a plan moving forward to help support equity and issues of bias and harm that might happen in our school system is the board made a statement of where they are on equity, and they asked for that in what their recommendations coming forward. So I'm working with Nilda and Charlie. We talked about how we did this, and you all know, because we brought it a couple times, how should we do it? And we talked about it as a board, that let's do some sessions together and find an outside facilitator. We selected Harry and Up for Learning for their work. They've done some work with other boards. and came recommended. Doing work with youth at the table, which for me is one of my passions in doing my work in the way we do. And so this is the first part tonight. That's been our journey. I want to hand over to Jacoby because many of you as board members have seen some of the results of the work of the students, but maybe Jacoby, you could kind of give us, you and the rest of the student voice community that are here tonight could give us some highlights.
Yeah, I will first pass it off to Riley and Ruby, who are in the back.
Hi everyone, so I'm Riley and this is Ruby. We're part of the Student Voice Committee at BFA. And our team has basically been working on different projects for Maple Run. And Ruby and I are a part of the middle school support. So some schools that we've been working with is Saytech, City, and Fairfield. So Ruby,
Yeah, for Fairfield right now, we are working on connecting with them to set up an initial meeting so we can work on building the connection with the middle schools. I currently have connected with the student leadership teacher, and we are currently just working out dates to find.
So I'm working with Saytech, and Saytech has been trying to work on a student voice committee for their team. And we're trying to make that happen. We're currently in the works of making a second meeting, but we're not sure when that's going to happen. And the person that's supposed to be doing the city has not been able to make it. So we don't have any updates for that yet.
Yeah, and I would just like to add that with the addition of the Student Voice Committee at Saytech, and then with working with staff at Fairfield and City, we're able to get a more inclusive and well-rounded approach to student leadership in middle school, which will in turn, not only will we get what do middle schoolers want and what are they seeing as problems to be able to go out and fix these problems, but we're also able to increase their responsibility in the school environment and culture when we come to high school. And really, by shifting it from just a student council who's typically planning the dances and fundraising, by having a student voice committee who is focused on, especially at Saytech, where we focus on equity issues and figuring out how they can make the school be as inclusive as possible, we felt that the work, especially at Saytech, is really tying into what we're doing here and building that education on inclusivity in middle schools and not just high school. Oh, and then I'm up next again. The next thing that we've been doing is throughout the past few years of the Student Voice Committee being a thing, we've held listening sessions with students from various groups, so trying to really get an opportunity for a lot of people to share their input. And a lot of what we've been doing are chalk talks, which are silent writing activities which encourage equity of voice so that people don't have to go around in a circle and share things, because that can be a little scary. So we find that if people are able to write or draw what they're thinking on a piece of chart paper, you can get some more results, and you can follow up with people, or they can come to you if they would like, and you can have more of a conversation and dialogue in that way. And then in terms of at the end of the year, we do a video, which I think many of you saw last year, on the district goals and a lot of the things that we collected from students throughout the years in our surveys and our listening sessions and in the video, was that the board needs to take a stance on equity and a stance on how students are getting resources and how inclusive our schools are and what that education looks like.
All right, my name is Amelia. I am big shocker, also a member of the Student Voice Committee. Another thing that we've been really trying to do is to incorporate a diverse group of students into our group, as well as to support the diversity of students at our school and within our community. And one thing that specifically I have been doing recently is BFA Experience Nights coming up. And I was actually homeschooled for the majority of my middle school experience. And I didn't know that BFA Experience Night was a thing, so I didn't attend it when it was available to me. But recently I've been working with Miss Jamie Bristol, and we have been catering specific posters and postcards to send out and make available to the current students that are in 8th grade that are homeschooled, that are from the area that BFA St. Albans draws from. And we've recently finalized some of that, and we're going to be sending it out to hopefully get a higher turnout of homeschool students at the upcoming experience night. And I'm going to be able to facilitate things with them and give people tours and answer questions in a way that I wasn't able to experience. So we're really excited about that.
Yeah, so a big part of our work this year has been around including more diverse groups and clubs at BFA and organizations outside of BFA, and then working with the homeschools. So we're really this year trying to expand, so like streamline what we're doing, that way everyone has access to it, and expand what we're doing, that way more people can get the benefits and learn about our district and learn about what we do and see how we can help and see how they can help us. And so a lot of our work this year has really been on including people and figuring out how we can do it the best way possible in the name of equity.
I think that's I mean, the board, you've heard a lot of this, and then I think about, for the visitors that are here, you've heard a lot of this sort of work, I think with Veronica, what you've done with staff, and Dr. Williamson, how you've been through this journey with us. So I think that's probably a good summary right now, like, of where we're at and how we kind of came to tonight.
Yeah. I mean, my thought, Bill, is to say what we've outlined, and I understand you all have seen, is this timeline of 3 work sessions, tonight being the first, and the remaining ones being in February, to take both a number of resources, as in existing policies, including the one on your wall, to dig into scenarios, to begin to appreciate what some of the dynamics are at play when an organization like a school district navigates developing a policy and the implications for implementing a policy. And in 3 sessions be able to move forward with a draft of a policy that you all feel is a good starting point. And I think the way to think about any policy is it's a declaration at a certain moment in time, and it's to be constantly revisited and refined as you go. But that's the flow of work that we've laid out. And I think we've touched on a lot of the building blocks, sort of what's already happening, how this relates to both the work the students are doing and the staff is doing, and a little bit about how we operate at Up for Learning. I thought it would be helpful to hear from you all before we dig in further about any thoughts you have about this work. And I'll say that more specifically. I mean, we all come to conversations with different assumptions or hopes or concerns, and it's helpful often to be able to name what those are at the outset of a process like this, so that we make sure we attend to those things as we move through this 3-session effort to develop a policy. It also gives me an opportunity, and I hope all of you an opportunity to get to know each other a little bit more about, like, what is it that each of you brings to this conversation. And you know, given that we've got a limited amount of time, you know, it's a short sort of snapshot of a hope, concern, question, idea that you might be walking in with. It might also be that you know, there's nothing formulated in your mind at this point, and so, you know, it's always fine to pass and say, I'll come back to that, or we'll make space for it. Is that clear enough sort of request of you to just sort of get the temperature in the room about, okay, you're headed toward developing a policy on equity, what's in your minds and your hearts? I want to just sort of capture stuff on the flip chart, just sort of the big ideas or questions or comments that come out. So I'm going to just go up there and do that. And if you would, it's also helpful for me to hear people's names again, and perhaps that'll be helpful for you. So you could just remind people what your name is, and then thoughts about the work we're setting out to do. If there's someone willing to start, we could just make our way around and give each person a chance. Anybody ready to launch this? Thanks.
Akuma, my name is Akuma, and what comes to mind is equity and learning differences. in socioeconomical differences and in cultural. And one thing I would like to get out of this policy is a guideline to help guide us in future policies too.
So equity in a lot of different dimensions.
Yeah,
it sounds
yeah,
like.
not just like a statement, but how do we use this policy moving forward?
Okay, so like the many dimensions and the application. Okay. Again, I'm just gonna try to capture sort of the big words to try to summarize. Can we just pass around? Again, you can pass if you'd like, or if you want to offer thoughts, questions, hopes, concerns. Yeah. What is that?
Pickle needs to come back.
Oh, okay. Not as in pickleball, but as in just pickle. Got it. Okay.
Oh, I think I'm gonna pass it this way. Come
Yeah.
back to me.
Me too. Come back to me too.
That's a pickle, by the way. Just to be clear, like, I'm trying to, yeah.
I'm Dr. Jen Williamson, just a community member, and just, I would say something that I heard from the students was concern about when things happen that violated policies, that there were no real consequences for students, so students had no reason to not continue doing their inequitable behaviors. So making sure that there's some sort of like delineated consequence for policies, for anything that goes against policy.
It's Joanna.
Yeah. So for me, I'm a social worker, and so I come at this from a kind of a social work lens. And I am always thinking, when I think about policy, I'm always thinking about it from the unintended consequences that come about. So when I look at equity, I'm always thinking about how can we do better, and on a continuous journey of how we can do better. It's just when we think we've got it all, we've included everybody, right? Time passes, new things happen, and there's another group, or there's another way to look at things, or there's another way to interpret things. And so we've got to be constantly moving and reassessing how to include.
Yeah, it's Jack, right?
Yep. So Harry, being the youngest person in the room, when I went to American U when I was 18, I was a civil rights, I got into the civil rights movement, and I can't believe that I'm now 77 and we're still talking about something that I thought would just already have been kind of understood and battled and fought and realized. But recently, the town of St. Albans, where I live, they were discussing the state put out an advisement for towns and cities to come up with an equity statement of diversity, equity, inclusion kind of a thing. And they took back that sort of general statement and wanted to whittle it down because it made them nervous. So I'm seeing in public places people afraid of diversity, equity, inclusion, which I thought were civil rights, which I thought was already the law, which I thought the Supreme Court had already battled on. But I'm finding that people, and in a discussion with somebody from our town, one of the town leaders, that somebody called me a DEI idiot. So I thought to myself, I'm pretty damn proud of being a DEI idiot. I believe in diversity. I believe in inclusion. I believe in equity. But I'm finding we're still fighting the battle. So here we are, tonight. talking about equity, and thank God there are students here that believe in equity. It's rather refreshing. So I'm all in, but I can't believe I've spent many years, and now again, fighting the same battle with people in my community. I guess they want all white Christian students to go to school. I guess they want only men to be able to vote. And I think black people shouldn't be allowed to own property. You know, we could go back and back. And what I said to this person, I tried not to pick something real controversial. So I said, I'm so glad my daughter got to play sports. She was, you know, she played lacrosse. And being superintendent at Franklin Northwest, a few years ago, girls came to the board and wanted to have a girls hockey team. And some board members started saying, oh, that's going to be too expensive, we can only afford the boys, and all. I said, time out. Went into executive session, and I said, there are laws about equity. Boys have a sport, and girls want to have the sport, we'll have the sport. So we started a girls hockey club. 2 years later, those girls won the state championship. So I thought talking about women in sports was a little bit better as an introduction for the conversation than if I went to civil rights or you know, equity for our gay community, whatever, would have been softer, but this person still got angry about that. So I guess that person doesn't want women to be allowed to be in sports, and as simple as that can be. So anyway,
Okay.
big
Yeah.
topic, but I'll keep my mouth shut now.
Well, not sure how to easily summarize that, but I'm going to just put what you were talking about had a lot to do with values. So I'll just use that term at this point.
Yeah,
And again, I'm just trying to capture sort of
Another way,
seeds from what
it's
people have said.
also a community issue, not just
Yeah.
something that the board's doing. It's a community issue in St. Albans town.
How about, can we come up to this table and we'll just keep going around? I think it's Mary Ann.
Yeah, I'm gonna pass
Okay.
for now.
Okay.
I'll pass.
Are you pickling or
I'm
passing?
pickling.
Okay.
Dill pickle, I'm passing.
Okay. Can we come around this table?
Yep.
My name is Charlie, and my concern or goal with this would be to try to find, or it is a matter of finding successful ways to get people who generally feel crowded out to feel comfortable speaking up. There are a lot of blind spots that I and a lot of other people in Vermont have, just based on the way the state is demographically constructed, and it's very easy for someone like me to go ahead and speak my mind and misconnect with someone, and it's much harder for someone who is typically marginalized to feel like they are in a place where they can speak up, or if they are missed in a conversation, it feels like it's an intentional miss rather than an accidental blind spot.
Joy, I put the word voice.
Voice is good.
Okay.
Well, I am both queer and disabled, and I have a lot of friends at BFA that are also members of the queer community, and some of them that are also disabled, and a lot of friends that are members of historically marginalized groups. And I've been told time and time again by those friends that they've dealt with things that are either microaggressions or just outright foul treatment that's just not something that should be happening in schools, and then they feel as though it's not being addressed. And the reason I joined the Student Voice Committee is because I care about my community and I want to see change in my community. I want people that are like me and people that are not like me to feel comfortable in this community, like they have a place and like they have a voice and like they belong in school. And I would love to come away with a statement that I feel reflects that and can pave the way for that to be the truth one day.
Thanks. I put community up. Back table, Aaron, John, do you want
I think, I'm thinking of the word courage based off of what people have said, and I think it's the courage to find the things that matter to our communities and to do something that puts the needs of our students first.
Great, okay. And then let's come up to this table. Yeah, Bill, why don't you start and we'll go.
For me, one of the things I think about a lot is that we all have our own journey to where we're at. And I probably have one of the most privileged journeys of anyone, being a white heterosexual male, growing up in Vermont. I did grow up with, as many of you know, I grew up with auditory problems that I had, and I had to go through that, but I had a very privileged life with parents that could take care of that for me. So every day when I think about students, I think about the students that don't have that. Whether it's learning difference, a racial difference, a gender issue, sexuality issue, and I don't have that experience. And so one of the things I like to think about for myself is I don't have that knowledge. So how do I listen to that experience and then support what the needs are for that student? And so when I think it's kind of part of that student's piece, but it's also being willing to listen to people that have different experiences than myself, and that's their truth. And it's their truth. One of the things I was taught early on in college was perception is, for everyone, their perception is their reality. So how do we help them with what their reality is? And I have to listen to what their reality is. I can't assume that I know their reality.
So I put listen and support.
Yeah.
I would like to echo what Joanna was saying. Like in some of the work that I do, I find that the schools that call themselves restorative or that call themselves equitable aren't, because true equity is continuous, and so I would like to highlight like continuous, and in the report, not the report, in the policy, I'd like to see something that is like continually working on and you're striving for it, understanding that it won't ever be perfect, but it's always a work in progress and you have to be as good as possible.
So I kind of, going back to what Jack said about the community member, I think about educating the community members that might not know about DEI on what it actually is and how it affects kids. So yeah, education to the community.
I'm Jessica. So I think what stands out to me a lot of times, along the lines of what Jack was saying, like this can be divisive work in a community, and it shouldn't be. But even a student told me today that her paragraph was selected for editing and put in front of the class, and she had written some things about gay rights and Black Lives Matter, and she was like nervous after class that some other kids were going to harass her because she was writing about those things. And that should not be the environment in the school. And the kids who are, doing the harassing probably have no idea, the history or why they're even saying the things they're doing. So when we do this work, I just want to make sure we're doing it in a way that's like drawing people in, like, latching onto the education piece, but doing it in a way so people are like, oh, why would I not think this is a good idea? Like, how can we get more people drawn in and supportive?
Pass.
No.
Is there anybody pickled, am I doing this right, who wants to comment now?
Yeah, I think hearing a lot of people's voices reminded me of some equity work that I did with city school, with the district, things that I've worked on with my own family. Not being from here, my husband not even being from the United States, our children having dual citizenship, language, looks. Grandma and grandpa aren't here to take the kids, a lot of a lot of factors that we deal with, and happily, right? Like this, we love this community. We are here. But how do we belong? And how do the people around us know why it's important for us to feel like we belong? I just think that the education that you guys were talking about and pulling people in reminds me of actually some, like, whatever, but John, we've been working on the committee work, and one of the books that we were reading was talking about creating policy for schools, and so dorky, but one of the things that really, really stuck with me in that book was talking about how when the staff believes in those rules, the administrator isn't micromanaging, because everyone says, oh, no, we don't do that, or no, we do it this way. And that's what I would just love in this town, and the city, and Fairfield, that the combined, that it's not just our kids who are learning it and spreading it out with the adults, and nobody has to be like, oh, am I supposed to say that? You know, that, ooh, it's not really PC of me, those comments that people make. We don't say things that offend people. We don't say things that are hurtful. We consider other people. We care about the people around us. We care about the kids. We care about the adults. We care about the grandparents. We care about people that can't speak up for themselves, and we even care about the people that are I would just love more of that, and I think we see that so often in this town, except on Facebook.
Any other picklers that would like to chime in at this point? I do love the game of pickleball, so it's really appealing to be able to. Two quick reflections back to you. The way you start your meeting, Charlie, and explain to visitors, this is how, is a very equitable practice. Like declaring how you work together, the meeting norms that you have posted on the back, like that's an equity practice right there. Because what you're doing is you're saying transparently, this is who we are, this is how we're trying to operate, and it's not a secret. And so somebody can walk in off the street and say, okay, I have some access here. I just want to point those kinds of things out to you because I think sometimes equity gets, I'll just speak to it through my own work, right? Gets to feel like this huge undertaking. And some of it is just very small gestures of recognition, engagement, care. And there's multiple things you've already done in this meeting that resonate with that spirit. So I just wanted to reflect that back to you. Joanna, you got a...
I just have a reflection on what you just said, that it's not a secret. And I think that that's something that's so important and powerful, especially in a small rural area, is that people who aren't from here, or people who are from here forget sometimes that not everybody knows the rules sometimes, right? And so when someone new comes, whether it be, even when I moved into the town of Fairfield, like at first, I didn't know anybody, right? And we were glad that we lived on a road that was, on a house that was right on the road, because we could see people. Imagine if we lived down this long driveway, right, and we didn't know anybody, because we didn't have children at first. How do you become part of the community? How do you become part of the culture? How do you become in the know of things? And simply by talking about or demystifying things, so things aren't a secret, that you don't just know them because this is how it's always been done, and this, we all know how to get onto this basketball team, or we all know how to access the guidance counselors at school, or we all know how to get whatever it is that we're looking for. Well, not everybody does know, and so just simply make information available, accessible to people is unfortunately sometimes overlooked.
I think we've laid a lot of groundwork, and Bill, I'm sort of thinking out loud here that I think we could shift into our case study conversations.
Yeah.
Unless there's anything else by way of context from the work on the strategic plan or staff or students, so if you're agreed, I do want to say one other piece and then let's frame up. And the reason we that I didn't, I think it was Aaron organized the tables in this way, was because we wanted to spend some time in smaller groups using a series of case studies that have been developed by some really skilled educators and facilitators around this work, in a way that just enables everybody to be more engaged and then to reflect back out as a whole group. What are these situations prompting in terms of our thinking about what kind of policy would we want to shape? Okay, so I just want to throw one more thought into the mix. I've been reading a book called Of Boys and Men, and the reason I want to mention this is because I think it's really important, regardless of how privileged or marginalized people have been, that equity has got to put its arms around everybody. That equity is about white men as much as it is about black women. And I think sometimes we forget that. And this book is very thought-provoking because it really calls out, well, it provides a lot of data that suggests that boys are not doing well in our school systems and men are not doing well in our workforce. There's a lot of data, and I don't mean to say that one book is the last word on any issue, but it calls us out to say, so we need to take care of each other in a way that's truly inclusive. So I just think, I'm not feeling like I've nailed it here, but I just want you to share the context that this is about everyone in our community. So I'll leave it at that. How about? Can you take us to the case studies?
Yeah.
And how we want to?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's two pieces here, and Aaron's out handing them around, and you have electronic. The board members had these electronically ahead of time. There are case studies. These are about Paul Gorski, who's done a lot of work in equity, and we've used his resources before in equity work that we've used within the district and in other places. And then there's another packet that has 5 or 6 school policy examples from around Vermont. And what I was going to ask each table to do, and I'm just going to call this group 1, group 2, group 3, okay? And just to make it, I'm just trying to make this simple, is that I want, if we're group 1 here, we're going to read there's the first case study in here, which is teaching race with Huckleberry Finn, okay? And we're going to use the Essex Westford policy. So we want to look over the case study and look over the Essex Westford policy and say, okay, if this happened in our school district, there's some questions at the back to prompt our discussion if we need the questions. At the end of the case study, it's on the 3rd page. Every case study has some questions. And then we read the policy and say, so how do we deal with this? Does the policy help give us direction in how to deal with this issue or not? All right? And so group 2, I was going to have you do the ones on the case study on terms and endearment and using the Winooski policy. And then for group 3, we'd have you use an uncomfortable trip, and John, I'm going to have you join a group 2, and use CVSD, Champlain Valley's policy. And you can use those questions to help prompt the discussion, but it's really about, does this policy help us try to solve this issue or not? Because I thought that when Harry and Jacoby and I were planning this last week, the idea was, could we use some policy, because at the board level, we use policy to direct our work. Does this policy help, hurt, or not do any difference to try to solve the problem of this individual case if this came to you as a board? How did I get Jacoby and Harry? Did I get that right?
I think that's great. That's a great framing. What I'll say is we'll take 15 minutes, so it's 6:45. We'll come back together, and it would be helpful to hear out briefly from each group what were the abiding sort of themes, thoughts, maybe there are questions and concerns that have come up. And that'll be one more thing I try to capture on the flip chart and type up and get back to you. Because those will be some guiding sort of thoughts for us as we go forward with this work on policy. So you got about 15 minutes in your small group.
So you might take, what, 5 to kind of review and 10
That
minutes?
probably makes sense, maybe 5 to read and think to yourself, and then 10 for conversation. And John, I can move my.
No, you're good up there.
I'm good. Okay.
We're doing the uncomfortable field trip in CD.
input, the questions are not necessarily going to be answered as unanswered part of the discussion.
Yeah, and I think those questions is the policy useful in navigating this sort of thing? It's also a very good policy.
So maybe we can kind of look at the questions first and then talk about. It's a long way, but.
I'm sure. My students had maybe.
I'm ready to go, so discussion wise.
It was the kids, the teacher, and then not. And we're just for it. And then I simply
So it's funny.
asked how they feel, whether it might feel like it's in the close by voting, where people don't see.
But the brothers are always saying that your hand bothered me. Having context that this was like really outside of what we were in, and most of your kids was six. Well, her rep was just telling us.
And I think for explaining that,
I feel like in terms of addressing, if there's breast parts language,
I think that, you know,
if I was told to dress up in high school,
if people are to feel more comfortable by saying that certain words not splitting it up because they're going to say a lot of words, so saying that one thing we're talking about that word does not split the like that evidence, like OKR, like
I think she should have chosen another book.
What's that?
I mean, especially.
I didn't hear you.
Maybe a growing percentage of her class were students of color. She could have given some. I don't know, I think a lot of really the history behind the word, but I mean, I think she's just like those students on the spot. If I was the teacher, I would.
We as a school system way too procedures.
I think there's so many other books out there. I only read one handful a year. You could pick something different.
Right, and if somebody wanted to read Huckleberry Finn, they could find it at the library. It's not a thing.
Do they follow?
Yes, they do.
It's relatively new, I think, too.
It's not sure.
But I don't think it's banned.
if the
Not here.
finance policy to this.
But not here.
Yeah.
Maybe just some of them.
I believe that.
Yeah. Being able to,
Well,
I mean,
whatever that's.
Go to one of the teachers.
Sundays, we teach to students, and they pull out slip studies to get feedback before they present it as part of your curriculum. So students, it sounds like they can say a story.
maybe they do go to jail or whatever, but they're not
So we
probably thinking that that's
First.
necessarily.
got some feedback
So,
from him.
I was a track coach, and I heard
I
all
look
kinds
at
of stuff on
these
the bus,
policies
whatever.
with the idea, like, if I have an issue
Policy,
with a teacher, and I point that
says train
teacher
your
to
staff to ensure students experience
I like a bunch of lines on there related to culturally responsive practices.
Have fun telling each other.
Leveraging a student's lived experience to ensure learning, and
That's kind of what they did.
what were the
So-
practices that you engage with that did that? Because I don't know. And then the piece about respect for individuals.
Yeah, like the acting out.
Cultural perspective.
Yeah, it's a little weird. Why? I think attached towards it, like students, like, if you're wondering how they're gonna ask them, like, get some people who are, you know, all races, backgrounds, make sure it's representative, and how would this impact you, like, how would this differ about it? The words that are targeting those people, spread it out, that they also have the say in it. Not just people who are like, hey, let's just go and who are good students, but also people who are good students.
She shuddered. Kind of started taking on
I think though,
In many ways, we've read this
like these conversations.
years ago.
She trained.
There's a part of me that is so teaching around how when this happens,
Then the question is,
what
how do you
the issues and how that's wrong and that whole conversation could be wrong. I definitely prepared the kids ahead of time.
We're gonna-
It's not as much a matter because I was kind of raised there talking about here. Yes, we. Yeah, I guess. Discussion is around how it is an issue. I don't think that would have any impact. She's done but if they're younger kids, I question whether that is.
We're even having a.
No, let's revisit that statement to elect the second policy. I remember being in high school, I think it was my freshman year. We're back in late 70s, early 80s, and I'm like, okay. None of that, you know, and so I was right now teaching and a little bit of what you're talking about. Cultural growth that's happening within our communities, and the slowness that policy is going to make sense to read, not just boilerplate language. I think it'd be, and so I looked at the policy here, and there are 3 bullets on this, I think it's indicators of progress monitoring, policy on the second page. The curriculum is diverse, responsive education, and the impact on curriculum selection. There's a lot to be thinking about. Accessibility to curriculum is necessary for all learners, therefore, as instruction is designed, it must be designed for all students to be successful. I just want you, both of you are conferring credits, first of all, and then also that's what impact is. Back to what I was trying to voice at the beginning, of, like, I don't know the impact it's going to have. How do I design? And then last one, educators demonstrating cultural agility and responsiveness. So like, okay, because I think about, I go right to like something you brought up earlier, Veronica, about. I want to get it so one of the issues. At the same time, understand the cultural impacts that are happening. One of the pitfalls and acts in our culture. And then, so how does that, so we have that discussion first.
Also, too, you don't really
I agree
know.
with whoever's sitting here.
Because he may just be like in a situation where he's lesser in the power dynamic, so he's just laughing. Right, he's not going to opportunity to say that, and then the teacher comes down.
Or was it one of the lessons they talk about?
Right, but it's there, the guy who's already just laughing, to like, get along.
Just from experience, like,
Well, they asked him in a really inappropriate way.
things that could be sensitive, and then you could leave the room if you didn't, and it was never read aloud, but if there was like a discussion on it, like, you didn't have to be in the room, and like, you knew which pages were sensitive, and there was always an all person book to read. And then as a result, I was like, I usually punish I was on the tribal plan when I was younger, and so I like used to feel like people would follow it, and so I had with that anxiety. I would score out because teachers feel like practice fail at all the time. That's not my fault. That's the teacher's fault, or not doing what they need to do.
Well, the thing is like, if we're just comparing the story in these policies, can this teacher be like,
But yeah, you know, the teacher is entirely.
there's nothing here that helps the teacher take handle it and whether she did the right thing. This is just like.
I was stopping by to check in if you guys had a couple minutes to share out key ideas, folks' concerns, questions, explanation of your conversation, why something is the way it is.
Are there other policies are
Jumping
currently,
to-
no, but I don't mean that.
There are two other questions that are really.
Other policies that I as a teacher would say, okay, in this
As
situation.
you look at either the second or third question, or the first page of the policy from Essex Westford, is there anything there that stands out for you?
Implementation, and one of
It's
them.
a policy for inclusion, not a policy. We're not,
Because I think also
it's not the season on what.
where it says providing professional development, training.
Raising up.
Oh, right, but not lower, but we were
Yeah.
saying like,
It's-
I'm being lower than that.
You, Martin Tide
For
was.
me, that was the glossary.
Equity.
You all can say she will be ready in one of your share,
Like an
share
hour,
out,
like,
what would
like,
it
You
be?
know, also not
what's
the charge
happening.
in that
Here's what we're doing. There was some question, like that transparency. And then words that are in our mission, I said, like expression of
Can we
community.
have a conversation?
Well, we're gonna fire the
That's what I saw.
Yeah.
Yes.
For me, like the training of the staff is really important.
So I'm happy to share out. Well, what specifically do we want to highlight, so I make sure I can.
Teachers should then mindful of the numerous reasons why that feel uncomfortable they have fingers on.
And what did you have to write? Do we need to explain the story that we read?
Yeah.
The policy gives a framework.
Yeah, but I mean,
Conversation, the framework is useful.
The policy takes time to do it.
Right.
How to approach it.
Right, so, you gotta,
The essence policy, you can get into this over 6 pages where we're not going to fill.
Okay, so let's wrap up conversation in the small groups and come back together. I had stopped in with each group and just said, you know, in a minute or two, can you share out sort of key parts of your conversation? And so I just want to put them in the context of this flow of 3 work sessions. I think tonight is really an effort to start the conversation, see what people walked into the room with, see what begins to emerge when you grapple with both scenarios and examples of policy. I think that will give us some guidance on like what else do we need to bring to the table for our second session. Second session will be digging further in, bringing possibly more resources or voices to the table, so that by the third session, we're able to really go to a document and begin to refine the language in a policy, so that at least we get to a final draft of a policy by the end of session 3, and then we'll come obviously to you all to fine tune and approve, etc. So let's have a brief sort of sharing from each of the conversations. I don't think the task here is to try to summarize everything that you just talked about, but sort of key things. So if there are 1 or 2 people that could do that, I'll again try to capture some language up here just so we have a touch point to come back to. Can we start here and I'll go this way around the room?
Questions for anyone else? We have case 6.5, an unpredictable field trip, in which a teacher brings a classroom primarily composed of first generation, or significantly composed of first generation, or what will be first generation college students to an ad agency, basically as a career day sort of thing. She tells them to dress more formally, and some of the mistake she makes is that she cracks wise on 2 kids' sneakers when they come in, and gets upset that they don't seem particularly engaged with the company. The company representative says, quote, "If you have excellent grades and work hard, you could also work here, and once you're here, we take good care of you." Generally, we thought that in terms of the case study, the teacher wasn't very mindful of the composition of her class or of the interests of the students, and made a few assumptions like the kids came in with dress pants and sneakers, but did not like the fact, she did not like the fact that they weren't wearing dress shoes, which for a lot of kids, dress pants and sneakers is dressed up. We had the Champlain Valley School District policy, which we thought was pretty good. It's fairly concise, and it gives bullet point synopses that we were able to go back to and kind of identify what part of the policies the teacher failed to meet, specifically things like equitable access to high quality and culturally relevant instruction, and that makes it easy to basically identify where the failings were and where the teacher can improve in the future.
If she still has a job. We basically fired her.
Thank you for that concise summary. Can we go to that corner?
Got the kids. Balls.
I can do it. So we had, ours was called Term of Endearment. There is students, she's in first year of her school. She has students walking in and two boys are talking and they use an inappropriate term to refer to somebody else. And she asked who did it. And one gentleman says he didn't really say the N-word, he says it in a different form. And then another girl who's African American says it, and she's acknowledged endearment, and it turns racist. The teacher then shuts her down and says it's not a threat, and then she puts the victim, the friend, on the spot in front of everybody and says, "Is it true?" Kid says no big deal. So his friend says no big deal. Then she puts the kid on the spot again and says he can speak for himself. She finally ends up walking back into the classroom and kind of just says, remember one of our community norms of respect. I don't care how you pronounce it. There's no room for this kind of language. And she kind of drops it from that point. And so we have a Winooski policy. We also realized it's one of the older policies. It was actually adopted in 2013. It's a very superficial policy, at least what we were talking about. It's mostly geared for the superintendent on this policy. And so one of the things we talked about is there's not much for her on this, but it looked like she was recruited to support community culture and responsive, so she didn't have like training behind it. It also says to seek out student input, and her shutting down that student didn't take this student input. We talked about how they could have done it as a collective, or maybe come back the next day and address it too. Training wise, maybe going to another facilitator to help with this. What else did we talk about? Anything else? Yeah, but we talked about how professional development probably wasn't given to her, and she also, for first year teacher, which is also kind of hard. And we have a teacher with us, and she was saying how in that situation it's kind of hard when it's supposed to be professional development to make the right decision at that point in time, because emotions are high. And so kind of reconvening was really important, but this policy was very superficial. But it's also one of the older ones I've realized, I don't know what we have in front of us.
Nice. Great. And then you're in front here.
Yeah. We read the case on Huck Finn, and the teacher was having the students read Huck Finn out loud, and there were quite a few times throughout the passage. There was a student African American student who was generally really engaged with literature in the class and wasn't engaged with this, and the teacher was asking what's wrong, and they started to do reading out loud, and after several times of using the N-word in the passages, he erupted and ran out of the classroom. And so it was really like what should have been done. And so we used that of like what could the teacher have done? You know, should the book have been used? We talked about that, and what are possible pre-teaching or pre-work that can be done with the class that might have words there that are offensive to people, and how do we deal with that in our teaching? So we had a lot of discussion around that. We had the Essex Westford policy, which is quite lengthy, but I think we connected with a lot of pieces in it, and some things we really liked in there was a required annual training of the staff, being open to feedback, and when something doesn't go right, and asking for quarterly monitoring of it. It has goals in there and definitions of equity, and also the direct statements about the curriculum and being anti-racist and anti-bias and inclusionary, and that teachers are responsible for setting that up, not only selecting materials but setting it up in their teaching. So, did I miss anything there, folks? Good. Try to take notes.
Okay, thank you for reporting out. Thank you for sharing the conversation. With a couple minutes, I'd like to take, and before wrapping up, I'm just curious if anything else has surfaced that anybody would like to add in terms of, again, takeaways from these small group conversations or from the last hour, all to help us think through, like, what do we do step 2? As I described it, it's making sure we've cast a wide net, that we've been as inclusive as we can, and looking at what are all the considerations, resources, practices that we want to have in mind as we craft a policy. And some of those we've looked at tonight. What else do we want to bring to the table so that you all are in a position to draft your policy at the end of session 3? So anything else that's surfaced that you'd like to add?
You brought it up initially, you talked about just assumptions.
Can you say more on that?
Just, and it kind of goes with values, right? When Jack was talking about values, just people's assumptions. Like when I think the first group, the first question was about asking about their shoes, right? So did the teacher start to make assumptions about those 2 students just based on how they came, dressed for the day, and did that not open the opportunity for, going down a road where that person had feelings about their behavior after that? So when we make assumptions about people, right, we can objectify them.
Thanks for explaining that a little more. Yeah. Other thoughts, questions, hopes, concerns about moving this forward through our next 2 sessions?
I saw that having conversations and including people in our case study, have pre-teaching and conversations we had with all the students to see if this was something they wanted to do or if there was another option, and providing different options in the curriculum so that people don't have to read a book that might be triggering to them. Had that happened, this situation might not have happened, and so I think a big thing that's coming away from me is having the professional learning and the feedback and conversations with students often to make sure that everything is going smooth and that there are options for students to opt out at any point if they feel uncomfortable, but there's another option ready for them. That way they're still getting the same concepts, but maybe without some of the language or things that might upset them.
Anybody else?
I just want to add, on the front of these packets with the policies, especially for board members, there's a really nice table here that between now and we have some time, and so I'll remind you back in January, but before we come to our next time we're working with Harry, which will be in February, it's a little ways because we're going to be working on budget for the next 3 meetings, is really kind of getting your ideas about what do you like in the different policies, maybe some things to avoid. I heard when the Kumas, there might be some things in the Renewcy one they have there, for example, hey, could use some better supports here. And just and then what questions does it bring up for you? So this table right here is really good for all the board members. And anyone that's in here tonight, it's great for anybody, but I'm particularly asking the board members to use this as a way of thinking about that to get your mind grounded in what do you like for a policy.
Yeah, final thought.
Well, I like the Winooski policy because the blame is the superintendent. It says the superintendent shall or whatever right at the beginning.
Policy
I couldn't believe it. It doesn't talk about the whole system. It talks about the superintendent.
You do know you just implicated yourself in that.
That's true.
Because you are the boss of the superintendent. not you, but the board, right?
But
So that would be the.
I was being facetious. I just thought that Wadusky policy was comical in that respect.
It's written in policy governance language, so it always says the superintendent will.
Well, thank you for engaging in this. I think particularly for having community members, students at the table with the board. It brings, again, it's an action on your part that's already an equitable practice. And I think that's important to acknowledge as we continue on, so.
Harry,
I think
thank
we're
you
good
so
for
much.
now.
Yeah, I think we're good for now.
Yep.
And, if there are thoughts folks have, you can let Jacoby, Harry, or myself, we're doing this as a threesome as a leadership, so send it to any of the three of us, and we'll be glad to try to include that. We'll give some reminders, because there is a little bit of a break between now and February. We talked about that as a board, of just some of the scheduling we're up against. But then we'll be back in February, and we'll have 2 meetings in a row there.
And we will come with our table filled out, right?
There you go,
Board
there
members
you go.
will have read everything and then
Yeah.
brainstorming.
Yeah, I think that is a really
Send us your
helpful
notes.
step, so. Okay. Thanks.
Charlie?
Thank you, thank you again.
Thank you.
So that moves us on to item 6, which is the consent agenda. We have minutes for November 19th and November 20th, and a media packet. Does anyone have any revisions to make to the consent agenda? Hearing none, the consent agenda is accepted without objection. Which brings us to item 7, reports to the board. We have a report from the student board representatives.
He walked out, so you guys are up.
I feel like we did, we talked about a lot at the beginning, we were talking about what we've been doing recently regarding equity and different policies at the school. We've been splitting off into different groups and we've been working on these specific policies. Another one I've been posting is basic needs. We've been working with Ada's Closet just to facilitate that, to make sure people know about it and that there are ways they can get resources at school. And we've also been working with the Abbey in terms of making shared food bowls available at school in different locations, even when lunch isn't going on. Like if, for example, you get a piece of fruit, you don't want it, you can put it in the shared food bowl, someone else can take it. And I don't really have anything else. Ruby and Riley, do you have anything you'd like to add?
I don't think so. I feel like we covered a lot in the beginning. So I think.
Moving on, thank you very much. Moving on is, we have item 8A, which is reports to the board schedule revisions. Bill, you want to?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this before. I just wanted to give you the actual schedule updated because of the work we're doing here with equity. It's pushing out a bunch of the reports to the board that are happening. So really the next board, there'll be a student fall data report happening next board meeting. But then the next report on the district goals would be all the way till March. Because we're really trying to have time for this in the budget. And so there, in your packet is a copy of, it looks like this, of the adjusted report schedule. So if anyone has any questions or concerns, I know Charlie, you and I talked about it Monday night. I'm glad to hear them, but.
Just ask a question, going back to Amelia, when you're talking about Ada's Closet, is that well stocked or do you guys need donations?
I am unsure about that right now because there's actually separate coordinators that manage Ada's Closet and we're just trying to make sure that people know that it's available. But I can absolutely find that out and get that information to you if that's something you'd like to know.
I think there is, like, it's not short stocked, but I think it's because not a lot of people know about it. I think if everyone that needed, if everyone knew about it, I think we might need more stock, but I don't think a lot of people know about it or know how to access it. So I think there is stuff that's there, but it wouldn't be there for long if we're successful in this.
How are you making sure they get that information?
I am not on that team, however.
Everyone's passing and she said.
We're working on it. I'm not, do you want to take it away?
We haven't had that much to go off of just yet. We
I was actually absent for one of the meetings, and one of our members, Olivia, she has been doing a lot of the work with that. She's not here right now, so I'm not exactly sure.
I do know that, I mean, I walk around school, there's signs all over about Ada's Closet, if you need something, see. One of the faculty members help support that, and that group is helping support that.
School nurses are aware of it, they utilize
Yeah.
it, school counselors.
They definitely know this, the students.
As a parent, I got an email from like the principal and it's in there.
Yeah,
Principal
yeah,
blog.
yeah.
So I guess there's some, but we're trying to streamline it.
Yeah.
One of the things that this group, the Student Voice, consistently reminds me about is that the way we think about it as adults doesn't necessarily work in the kid network or how to inform them. So I'm always learning.
And just to add to it, I'm on the DEIB committee at the hospital, and one of our goals is to work more with other community groups doing similar work, so finding ways to overlap with this group, and if donations do come up, and I can't promise anything, so I haven't brought it to the committee, but the hospital might be able to do some sort of drive or something.
Yeah, that would be great.
Any other questions or comments? All right. Moving to item 8B, we are looking to appoint 2 board members to the policy subcommittee. So I guess our first question is we have to first thing we have to do is identify, or this is an action item, the first thing we have to do is identify which board members we are making a motion to appoint. Anyone want to volunteer?
I would consider it. How often is it going to meet, the committee?
So we haven't really decided that, but in my previous experience in helping facilitate policy committees from the board, it's usually once a month. And a lot of it can be done offline because it's reading, what do we have, what's the state examples, or if we don't have anything, what are we trying to tackle here? The first thing we're gonna do is figure out a calendar review. Because Maple Run came together 8.5 years ago, and we haven't been doing any policy review. So we need to look at them and kind of do a schedule of like, which policies do we think we need to, and I'm gonna bring a proposal, I'm not gonna start from scratch, but here are the ones I think how you should try to set a review, and most policy committees review every policy about once every 5 years. Doesn't mean you still have to tackle anything new you think you might have to tackle, but you should be reviewing your policies once every 5 years. So I think it's gonna be an hour to an hour and a half unless we really need some work sessions, once a month. That's kind of what's been in my mind, and that can be done through Zoom or in person.
Yeah, I'll do it, unless there's some competition.
Looks like we have 3 volunteers.
You're so excited.
Yeah, pretty nice problem to have. We had planned to have 2 community members, which we appointed last time around, and 2 board members. And so we have 3. So I guess how do we want to let's do we want to have a debate?
Could we appoint
Joanna.
so that if somebody can't make it?
Could we appoint 3, like an even number is kind of hard to manipulate.
Well, it's 2, and then the superintendent. So it was, in addition, it's a 5-person policy. If we've got,
Who was the third?
we've got you, Marianne, and Joanna all raised their hands.
As your superintendent, it's your decision as a board, I'm not trying, but I'm fine with 3 people if there's 3 people, so.
I feel like Bill's more a facilitator than,
Do we have a general consensus that we're good with 3 people on the board? Looks like yes, so we'll go to, I need a motion to appoint Jess, Marianne, and Joanna to the policy subcommittee.
I'm a motion to
Second.
Any discussion? I think we already had the discussion, so I think everyone is in the room, so we can just do this as a group. All in favor, say yay.
Yay.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion passes, so it's just Mary and Joanna to the policy subcommittee.
And what I will do, and I don't think it will happen this month in December, I think we'll start in January, just kind of knowing how December is. And that's a little selfish on my part, I will say. But is that we'll try to figure out a common meeting time with the two community members and say, okay, when do we want to have this? Do we want it on the third Tuesday of the month or whatever? And we can figure that out. Okay? So, sound like that would work? We'll figure that out here in December and start in January. Okay. Thank you.
On to new business. Item 9A is our favorite topic, the budget. And is that going to be?
This one, the data to support the budget development is myself, and then Breeze in number 2. So I wanted to, I put in your packet, and this is a live document. It's a Maple Run Unified Budget Development Guide. What I tried to do, you remember the 2-pager that we handed out at the forum? I've tried to do this for board members, and I'm going to show you a resource. And Aaron, John, I didn't tell you about this, but I am going to want the website up in a minute. Sorry.
No problem.
Is that this is a live document where we've given you all this data in the board this fall or last spring. So in here is information about what's our enrollment data look like, what's our class size look like, what is our enrollment projections, how are our students doing. We'll probably add a lot more after John and Alexis and crew do the data report from this fall in here. Becky's done information on our staff, what's the distribution on that, and some of the graphs from before. So you'll see all this in here, but I'm trying to give you one place to go if you need to, I want to know some information as I'm thinking in the budget. I want to go look at data. So you don't have to go back through. One of the board members said, I don't remember which one it was, but one of you said, hey, I know you gave me that bill in this meeting, but I have to go back and look through all the minutes. And so that kind of sprung this idea along with seeing what some other superintendents did. So it's a live document that we'll keep updating. Like the enrollment projections are from last year. They should have been in by now. We know they're coming in the next week or two. So as soon as we add the new ones, we'll take these out and put the new ones in there. They won't change that much because they're 10-year projections. But we want you to always have up-to-date data. So if you wanted to be able to look at it, you know where to go. You don't have to go through multiple places. Okay, so we wanted to give you all this. We've been giving it to you all year long. And what I'm hoping this will actually become is a dashboard for the district for the year. So this is linked in your agenda pieces. And then, John, have you got to the website? So if you can go there. And this is for the community. So for those that are on the outside, if you go to school budget info, it's right at the top. There's a button there. And we're going to start populating this page of all the budget information that we've given you as a board, but so the community knows where to go and get it. All right, so this budget development guide that I just told you about is that second link right there, that budget development guide. The one pager we gave at the forum is right below it. There's a lot of things that are black right now that we haven't given, we just haven't produced it yet, but it's coming in all the budget work in which we're doing. So if someone asks where is it, you can say go to the top page, there's a school budget link, all that information's right there.
And is it possible at some point to link that to each of the town websites, just if people want to be able to look at it?
So I don't have control over the town website. I can ask the town clerks or
they
managers
could,
to do it.
Yeah.
They could do that, yeah. But and also we'll use it in our town reports, we'll put the town report. So it's things up here that you don't have tonight, like we're gonna show you draft 1 of the budget, but we don't have it allocated yet by expenses and functions and accounts yet.
Yep.
Hopefully we'll have that next meeting for you, and so then that will be linked.
Okay.
Okay, so we've taken the cue from a few different school districts and what they've had up, and just kind of taken the best of what we thought the best. Aaron Ruchelo is the one taking care of this, and we're just trying to put that up, and tonight's presentation that Bree's about to give you is already up there. So, it's right there. So, it's in your packet already, so it's nothing different than what you're seeing in your packet, but we're putting it up here. So people have access to it, because I think the only way, with the tension that's in the budget in our community and our state right now, and probably nationally, I don't know if I can say that or not, I can say the state and our community, is to be as transparent as we can be. So if you hear someone say, hey, could you do it this way, please send me a note. It's not that I don't want to do it, we may not have thought of it. So, glad to share whatever people want to have.
That's great. Thank you for doing this.
Yeah, so I want you to know where all this is. Okay, so that's the piece about the data to support the budget, so now we're on to draft one of the budget.
Okay. So in your attachments, so first I'm gonna start off, I was sick last week, so I might have a coughing attack, and apologies for that. But in your documents, there's the first draft of the budget, and with putting in all of the increases in salaries, and the benefit increases, I am still working with the school principals and directors to increase and look at their budgets for the discretionary funds. But looking at all of that, it's coming out to a budget of $80,037,780, which is a 4.99% increase over the FY25 budget that we currently have. The state of Vermont has come out with information, but we don't necessarily know what we're going to get for revenues in here. So a lot of this is assumptions. So you'll see on the second line, there's an estimated education spending with assumptions, and I just have $20 million in there for right now. This year we have 19 million in change, but I don't know what we're going to get. Hopefully it'll be around 20 million. But the block grants for Triple E and special ed just still hasn't come out yet. We are waiting on that. Also, sorry. Also in here is the long-term weighted ADM. We still don't have those numbers completely finalized, so it's hard to get an estimated per pupil spending. But we're using last year's, or actually we're not using last year's numbers. It's going up 4.95%, which would be in relation to the 4.99% increase that we have for the FY26 budget. Going down, you'll be able to see that the wages are 53% of the budget, where health insurance and related costs, which is HRAs, HSA, cash in lieu, and the health insurance is 14.9% of the total budget. And then all other employee benefits, which is life, LTD, dental, Beamers, is 8.1% of the budget. And then going down a little bit further is the contracted services, which is 2.5% of the budget. But those are still some of the numbers that I need to work with the principals on to get more information on, along with the tuition, transportation, and property services. We don't have all of the students who are on wait lists factored in yet for those costs. And then again, the supplies, we are trying to have supplies be a level budget for that, so that we're not increasing the supply amount much. And then again, the other dues and fees and the principals and interest payments, that is actually going down because the bond payment at City School is in the final year, so it's about half. Yes. So, and then down below, you'll be able to see more information that's outstanding. So a lot of the things are outstanding from the Agency of Education, including the block grant amounts, transportation aid, allowable tuition rates, the common level of appraisal percentages. And if we could put up that pie chart. So up here on the screen is the pie chart, and this is just a good representation of what each category of what I've listed on your first draft, of the breakout of all of the expenses. So the salaries, again, 53%, the health insurance, 15%, employee benefits is 8%. So that's a little over 75% of the budget is going to salaries and benefits. Do you have any questions?
Can I just add something? Thanks. There's a bunch of assumptions in here. So we're hoping by the next meeting that a lot of the, even in the expenditure budget, there's a lot of assumptions. So Bree has a list going of all the things she wants to check between this draft and the next draft. You're used to seeing a function item budget, which we've looked at when Bree's given us our quarterly reports. And so that will be in that format at the next budget to start to see that. But it's too hard to get really exact right now because of just trying to get, like an example is like tuition costs for kids that are outplaced. What do we think it's going to be? And we thought that would be, we kind of look back at what's been done in previous years, and usually at this point we're still at estimations. Those get tightened up by the second December meeting. So we'll get tighter and you'll get a lot more information. That's why if you go back to that web page, you see there would be graphs and function. You would get a budget by function and account codes. That's not there right now, just because we need to clear those up. So my hope, and I want to say this as a hope, is that this is the top level and that our assumptions are conservative. We think they are, and that we'll be able to come down more without affecting really any sequential cuts. And I say that as a transition to what you asked us to do, was to prepare 3 different models. So I asked the leadership team to look at models of what would be if we had to cut by percentages down to 2.5%. If we need, we will, at the next meeting, we will give you what it takes to get to levels funded, which means no increase, no new dollars, if we need to get there. There's so many assumptions right now. I don't know if, are we truly at 4.99? Are we at 4.2? Are we at 3.7? I don't really know. So I didn't want to stir up the pot to say, let's do a lot more cutting when we don't need to do that. So we said, let's go to 2.5%. So you'll see a printout that's here, and it will get put up on that page as well. These are cut areas. They're not soliciting positions, they're just areas we would start to look at from talking with the leadership team. We did it, as we talked about it as a board last time we were talking, we're trying not to identify certain positions or certain people or certain schools. So it says Maple Run, we wanted to I knew you would ask me about FTEs, so we put in general what we were thinking the FTEs. Those are very rough.
Yes, and we did talk about, the positions that haven't been filled.
Right.
And looking at that in a trend formula in terms of, what has not been filled this year, what was not filled last year, looking back maybe, 3 years just to see what have we done without, what can we do without. So they're not linked to people, but they are linked to specific positions.
Do you want to give her that data? Great.
So I don't have last year and the previous year, but currently right now we have 25 open positions that we're actively trying to fill. And I don't have it broken out by which bargaining unit they are, but there is 25 open positions.
And that was 1.6 million, as we talked about back in early November. So I said to the principals, those may be the positions you want to reduce, or those may not want to be the produce, because you have to decide what you need to run your building. But they also understand, I think I can say this for the team, and John or Brianne, correct me if I'm wrong, but they were in the same place you were, Joanna, of like, hey, if we don't have those filled positions and we haven't been able to fill them, why are we going to cut someone that's in a position? All right, so they're definitely having that thinking. But at the same time, they said, I have to evaluate, do I really need this position that I don't have filled over one that's filled? And they're human. So they don't want to have to do that unless they see a student need to do that.
Right. Or do we reallocate them somehow?
Well, that's exactly, we're talking the same language.
Okay.
So that's what I'm talking about, like, I'm willing not to have those funds,
Yes.
but I really need this one position that's in there, because I can see how that's gonna impact student need and help the building overall. So that's the conversation that we had in this room a couple of times. And then they all came to me and said, these are the areas, and we combined that, and they actually looked at this list. We looked at this list yesterday before we brought it here to say, do we feel like, okay, that's how we can explain it right now. But one of the things I've talked about is that ethic of like not trying to pin any individual to thinking like, hey, my job.
Absolutely.
So, and that list of 25, yeah, it's not you.
Why are you looking at me?
Sorry, man, sorry. I was trying to scan across the room. And I happened to hit you at that point.
I know, I'm teasing it.
Yeah, no, I need a good tease. And it actually helps to laugh a little bit. Because people get, I just wrote an email to the whole staff right before the meeting, telling them we were gonna give you this report. And budget time is high anxiety for educators. And so it produces high anxiety. It produces anxiety for me. I don't want to cut anyone's job. It's not what I want to do. But I also know that we have to have a budget the community will support.
Right.
That's what we have for you right now. There'll be a lot more again in December, but we take any questions you have.
So those 25 positions, is that 25 FTE?
Yes.
Okay. And I'm looking at this sheet here, like to cut 2% out, we're looking at a total of 20 FTE. I'm assuming, based on what you said, that that's not something where we would be saying definitely cut 20 of those unfilled 25 positions. That would be, but there's no way of guaranteeing at a board level that there's not a person losing their job regardless.
I wouldn't guarantee you that. I would say that the discussions here, just how kind of I answer Joanna, and I'm sorry I'm being vague, but I want to try to protect people. I don't, is to say that we have very humane administrators, and the last thing they want to do is tell someone they don't have a job, but they're also having to balance in the student need.
Yeah.
And so what was looked at, I can tell you that many of these positions, but I can't tell you all of them that would be in here. Many of them don't have people in their positions.
Just sort of a reminder to myself that when we make cuts, there's going to be a human component to
Right.
it. But if we say cut 1%, that's 7.5 FTE. We don't have any way of saying cut only jobs that are not being filled right now.
Well, you could say that.
We could say that.
You could say that, or that's within your authority. I think one of the things that, when the board makes a decision of where you want to be budgetarily, and if it's going to require cuts, then we're going to get into a place of like, what are they? But I don't want to do that with 3 models. I'd rather have the board saying, this is where we're standing. Okay, great. We'll come back to you what that impact is.
So
Because that's only fair. I don't want to go tell people like we don't know what's going on.
Right.
We're doing modeling right now.
And we wouldn't make the decision on which position to eliminate. We would say at the value of, like, if we were able to be told, that 1.6 million, right, whatever the value would be. So maybe if we say we would like to cut by that amount, however you choose in your individual buildings, to do that is how you choose to do that.
Yeah.
We know that this could happen this way, and then that's.
And we could have attrition happen.
Yes.
And there are no cuts.
Exactly.
We don't know because it's by
But
March.
you still have it in the budget to be able to.
You got to hit that budget, and at March 15th, we have to notify the association that these are the cuts coming. But by that time, we might know there's attrition. One of the things you said as a board last March was use attrition as your friend. Get in front of this.
Mm-hmm.
We know it's coming. You were very clear about that after the budget passed. So we've been using that as a tool. We ask anytime a position comes, that someone leaves a position, do we need that position refilled? Most of the time, the answer is yes.
Yes.
98 to 99% of the answer is yes. especially with the open positions we have. But I just want you to know that you, I heard you loud and clear as a board saying that to me last March.
Thank you.
I have another question on A2 here, that bottom line with the principal of info payments is about $1 million. So we're on our last year with the bond on that. Is that to assume that in FY27, that $1 million is basically not there?
No, because there will still be dues and fees, and we do still have interest and bond payments for the other schools.
Okay.
But a big portion of it, I think it was 300,000 maybe, was city schools bond, and that's now paid up.
Okay. I was really hoping that we would have $1 million and we could just scratch out in 27.
Unfortunately not. No,
And the other part that I would add to this, and we'll be bringing this to the next meeting, is the capital plan. The facilities directors and I are working next Wednesday, and that's coming out of the capital budget. But, you know, the bond goes aside, but when a bond matures, usually the repairs to that facilities increase. Because the lifespan of most of the mechanicals within a building are around 20 to 25 years. So we're replacing stuff already. I can tell you at City School, I can ask, there are 2 teachers that are there. You've lived through some HVAC problems this year that were put in the 2011 renovation, that they're coming to end of life. I don't know if you specifically did, but the building did. Because people had their classrooms moved around because of vicious falls. So that's, I just want to warn you, Charlie, even though you might see a bond mature, that money really needs to go in the building.
I knew that my hopes were going to get crushed. Do we have any other questions or comments about the budget as with the information we've got?
The only other question that I had, Charlie, was just a question that we had brought up one other time in one of our discussion meetings about the budget, was in terms of efficiency, looking for ways to improve efficiency within the systems and structures that we already have. And I'm not looking for an update on that. I'm just wondering, is that also still part of the conversation?
I think it is when we're talking about what we're doing. I think we're hoping to bring some data to you on that in the next meeting. That I was talking with Alexis yesterday. She's trying to bring you some of that data from what we're doing with our alternative programs and how are they doing on that financially and learning targets for kids. So I know we are in the middle level programs are good. Thanks. I was just in a meeting today. Reminded us some of the costs and what we'll be bringing back.
I guess my last question would be, what do you need from us for the next meeting?
I don't really need much. There's not much that we need from you right now. Mary Ann, you said it to me as you were walking in. The December 1 letter came yesterday. There have been, there's going to take a little bit of settling time with the December 1 letter because Act 183 changed how we calculate taxes a little bit. It's not the standard way in which we did. Bree and I are on top of that, I think. And so we'll have some rough estimated tax rates for you next time. There were estimated CLAs in there because CLA is different now. It's not the same CLA because it gets divided by the statewide average CLA. In some ways I want to thank the governor for what he said. In some ways I want to say, I'm not sure I really want to thank you. I want to thank them for the recognition he gave school board members and business managers for the hard work on the budgets, because the budgets are projected to be much lower this year across the state. They were projected to be around 7%, which is about, I don't remember what last year's is, so I don't want to take a guess, but it is.
I think it was 14.
The tax rates were 14, but I'm thinking of the overall budget increase in schools. He said the budget on average property taxes will only go up 5.9%. Remember, that's an average across the state. And that's for me not knowing what our tax rates are sitting here today, okay? So just remember that. That's the part I said I kind of wish he hadn't said that, because it's always an average, and some towns are going to be higher than 5.9%, and some are going to be lower. So that's all I would caution you on, that those are the big pieces from that letter. Bree, am I missing anything from the latest updates from the state?
So, I think it's hard right now because they're missing quite a few positions in the state of Vermont in the Ed Finance division. So getting information from them has been a lot slower than years past. So, and clarification on the letter that they had issued.
I would just add that 5.9% is still unfortunately well above the rate that people's wages are rising at. So we have a tough task in figuring out where we can help people in their pocketbook and where we need to fund our schools to the best of our ability. And those, we heard a lot about the effect of income and education. So we've got a fun balancing act to do. Anything else? Brings us to item 10A, the warrants. I'm looking for a motion to approve the warrants, acknowledging that passage of this motion will act as, well, that last bit is irrelevant because we don't have anyone participating remotely. So I'm looking for a motion to approve the warrants. Any second?
I'll second the
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Warrants pass. And that brings us to item 10B, the superintendent report.
So I'll be pretty brief. It really hasn't been that many school days since we last met. It's been 4 school days.
Last night, the night before.
Yeah, well, yeah, Joanna, Jack, Carly, and myself last night, yeah. But I'm thinking since this whole group came together, the whole board came together, it was the Wednesday before break and we've had 4 school days. A lot of work days in between, but 4 school days. I think most of you got what I said at the last meeting. I had one of my highlights of the year is I was in a musical, Beauty and the Beast, and I was a short cameo in the first scene. Very short, very small. Luckily drowned out by much better voices than my own singing. But it was a lot of fun. It was great to get to know the cast and to see other staff members be part of that and to the students and that. That's just one of those things. I personally had a tough day yesterday and I was up at BFA and I just said, I'm gonna just go sit with some students for a half hour. And it was for Jack, you'll get this, but it was class meeting time. And Polly was going over school-wide expectations by freshman, sophomore, junior classes. And I just sat there and like, yep, this is why I do this. You know, I was just sitting there watching the day of school going on. So that play was something like that for me that just kind of like reminds me why we do this work. So if you didn't get to see Beauty and the Beast, I think there's recordings around. We can point you to one if you want to see it. But it was well done, and I heard they had the former set design instructor from UVM lives here in, I can't remember his first name, is Jeff.
Jeff.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you probably know him quite well, because you spent a lot of time building it. But Jeff was at UVM for 30 years as an instructor, an unbelievable set. So if you didn't see the play, the pit was no longer in the pit, it was up in the loft above everybody, so it was pretty cool. The other thing is on your VSBA weekly newsletter came out, an update about the state profile was updated. And I meant to bring, because I knew a couple of you wanted copies of other profiles. They're up in the copier in my queue. I just didn't print them and you don't need to go get them. I can see you getting out. Oh, maybe Aaron printed some because he knew I was going to say this. There you go. So if you like a printed copy, it's there. This time the data was validated before the state put it in there through all the SDs, SUs. So I know like Brianna and I worked with people at the state to make sure that like the expenditure data was correct and how many students, because last time it said we had 2,400 pre-K students, which is a little over what we had for 2022-23 school year. Usually we have around 250, so it's only off by a factor of 10. So all that updated one will give you much more accurate data because it it's been verified by each of the SUSDs. There will be coming out reports about each individual SUSD. That's one of their places where they're trying to go. And Emerson did a nice job in his editorial commending the secretary and wanting to use data. And she truly does, and she is listening when folks say, like, that isn't right. And so I want to commend her for saying, hey, we're going to give you a minute. You don't have much time, but you got a little bit of time to make sure that data's right. The last thing I've been up to just myself is Bree and I have been doing a lot of budget work. So that's kind of it's been a lot of spreadsheet work in the past week or so. Yeah, a lot of spreadsheet work. And checking and rechecking and checking. So that's my report, Charlie.
Any questions or? Item, well, 10D was the plan for, oh, sorry, I skipped right over board announcements. Do we have any board announcements? No. Then we have our plan for our board observations, which we are all familiar with, and that also rolls into the board reflections. Do we have anyone with a reflection other than me?
I think I'll go to the BFA experience on the 17th.
We have ESP negotiations tonight.
It's a good thought, though, right? What about the timing? Can I do both? Maybe.
I have no idea.
I don't know.
Okay. I'll have to find out what the timing is. Sometimes it's later.
You might be able to do afterwards.
We'll see. Okay. I'll figure it out.
My reflection is about the play. Just as a footnote, the reason I know Jeff Medwiger so well is he designed the set that I got married on at UVM. And he also knows that I'm in his debt now, so you can call me to help him lift anything that he needs for set design. But I attended the BFA musical 4 times, and it was great. I attended 4 times for personal reasons, but I would have enjoyed it even if it was not all the kids were supremely talented. And just a couple items of that is I had more eyes and ears. I've attended BFA plays in the past and as an audience member, but I had more eyes and ears around the place this time because my family was very much involved in it. Hats off to Bill for his performance as a villager, but also from what I hear, he was very supportive backstage of all of our performers and the techies, which is great to hear. I had an 8th grader and a 5th grader who were in there in small roles, and they were there late nights doing the dress rehearsals and everything, and they were absolutely embraced by the theater kids, and like it was wonderful. With the usually a high school senior doesn't necessarily want to talk to an 8th grader, but my son and daughter really felt at home there, and I got to attend the cast party for a little bit and talk to some of them myself, and they are just amazing people, and it was great to talk to them, and it made me feel very proud of our district. And with that, board annual work plan, which is a link in our package, and we discussed it a little earlier today. And then we have item 11 is agenda for future meetings. We have supports for new staff, the budget, questions about the budget. If you have any questions, send them to Aaron. We do not need an executive session, so is there anything else? In that case, it is 8:01 and we are adjourned. 2 hours exactly.
Good job, Charlie.